It's important that you become aware of all potentially hazardous materials in your workplace. Hazardous materials are defined as any substance or mixture of substances having properties capable of producing adverse effects on the health or safety of a human being. In our day-to-day operation of transportation services, we use a variety of products that have the potential, if used improperly, to cause injury or illness. Fuel, lubricants, and cleaners are examples of such materials. They have a distinctive smell, or they may be completely odorless. During this video, we will identify these products and inform you of where you can obtain additional information about them. We'll review work practices and the use of personal protective equipment designed to minimize exposure to potential hazards. First aid and emergency procedures will also be discussed. It's a common sense approach to hazardous materials safety. Material safety data sheets. These MSDSs are provided by the manufacturer. They list specific information about the product, including the identity of the material, a list of the ingredients, hazardous properties of the material, and whether the material is corrosive or toxic, flammable or reactive. The MSDS also contains first aid information, personal protective equipment requirements, storage and disposal information, and directions for spill or other emergencies. If you need to know additional information concerning any product in your workplace, ask to review the MSDS for that product. Hazardous materials, liquid fuels. Because we use fuels on a daily basis, we often take them for granted. This could put you, your coworkers, and the public at risk. Fuels such as diesel and gasoline are flammable, and their fumes can be toxic if used in poorly ventilated areas. For this reason, only use fuels in an area that has proper ventilation. Never mix these materials together, as some fuels may become unstable or have violent reactions when mixed with other materials. Flammable liquids should only be stored in designated flammable storage locations that are away from heat, sparks, flames, electrical motors, or other sources of ignition. Avoid breathing the vapors of flammable liquids. Wash your hands thoroughly after handling any flammable material and never smoke anywhere other than designated smoking areas. When working with fuels, slow down, use caution, and put safety first. Hazardous materials, compressed gases. Alternative fuels such as propane may be used in some of our vehicles. Propane requires special care in handling when used. When filling a propane tank, eye, face, and hand protection must be worn. Propane liquid is very cold and can cause freeze burns similar to frostbite if the liquid comes into contact with your skin. In the event of a propane leak, evacuate all personnel from the area. Eliminate all sources of ignition and immediately notify your supervisor, who will take any necessary emergency action. Many of our passengers use oxygen tanks when being transported. While oxygen is not a flammable gas, it does accelerate combustion and should be kept away from flammable materials. Hazardous materials, lubricants, hydraulic and cooling fluids. Fluids such as lubricants, grease, oil, hydraulic cooling fluids, brake and transmission fluid may also be flammable. Keep all greases, oils, and petroleum fluids in a cool, dry, well-ventilated area away from open flames and other sources of ignition. Degreasers, corrosives, solvents, and removers. Degreasers, corrosives, solvents, and removers range from toxic to flammable. With safety in mind, always treat these chemicals as if they were flammable, taking all necessary precautions. Battery acid is corrosive and can cause damage to the skin or eyes. Personal protective equipment such as gloves, eye protection, and face shields must be worn when charging or changing batteries. Some degreasers, solvents, and removers are highly toxic. Always wear the appropriate personal protective equipment for the chemical you're using. Refer to the label, MSDS, or ask your supervisor for specific personal protective equipment requirements. Paint products. Aerosol paint products are extremely flammable. Their contents are under pressure, and if exposed to high temperatures can burst or explode. When using spray paint indoors or in an area where ventilation is insufficient, respiratory protection must be worn. If contact with the face or eyes is possible, eye and face protection must be used. Skin protection, such as gloves, is also recommended. Exhaust gases, airborne particles. Exhaust gases and airborne particles can be hazardous. Exhaust gases, metal grindings, and welding fumes are examples of such hazards. The tailpipes of vehicles with diesel or other internal combustion engines release carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, and hydrocarbons. Very small amounts of these gases are toxic, and if used in a confined area can cause permanent injury or death. To minimize your exposure to these harmful gases, make sure you are in a well-ventilated area or use other means to direct gas fumes away from your work area. Office supplies. Not all hazardous materials are used in the maintenance area. Office products such as ink, copier toner, and correction fluid pose a hazard if used improperly. The same rules go for these items as the other hazardous materials. Make sure you read the labels on all office products before use. First aid procedures. In the event that you or a coworker is exposed to a hazardous material, your knowledge of the appropriate first aid procedure is key to minimizing injuries. Always read the label or MSDS before using any product to determine what first aid procedures are appropriate should an exposure occur. If any hazardous material comes into contact with your eyes, flush them with water for 15 minutes. If hazardous materials come into contact with your skin, wash the exposed area with soap and water immediately. If propane contact occurs, immerse the exposed area into water that is warm but not hot. If you or a coworker is exposed to hazardous fumes, get fresh air immediately. If hazardous materials are accidentally ingested, do not induce vomiting. You must seek medical attention immediately. Should paint products be ingested, drink large quantities of liquid to dilute the toxic effect of the materials. In all first aid situations involving hazardous materials, notify your supervisor immediately and seek medical attention if necessary. Emergency procedures. In the event of a hazardous material spill, eliminate all open flames and ignition sources in the vicinity of the spill or released vapors. Don't forget that internal combustion engines and electrical power tools are ignition sources. Ventilate the area. Avoid breathing vapors and clean up spills with quick, dry material or other absorbent materials immediately. Keep in mind that the residue and absorbent materials become hazardous as well. Before re-entering the work area, make sure your supervisor has approved the area as safe to enter. Eye, face, and skin protection must be worn when cleaning up such spills. In the event of a fire involving hazardous materials, notify emergency personnel immediately and move all personnel to an area that is safe and free from smoke and fumes. Put your personal safety and the safety of others first. Hazardous material fires should be fought by experts. Hazardous material tips. Never wear contact lenses in an industrial environment and always use eye protection. Always read the label. Learn when, how much, and how to use materials before you use them. Labels and MSDS sheets contain information ranging from ingredients to storage and disposal instructions. Never use chemicals stored in unmarked containers. If the container is not labeled, don't use it. If you find an unmarked chemical container, stop and notify your supervisor. Chemicals in unmarked containers are accidents waiting to happen. Never eat in an area where hazardous materials are used or stored. Always take your breaks in designated areas. Don't improvise. Mixing chemicals, taking shortcuts, or being creative will lead to serious injury. Stick to the instructions. Take the time to do the job right. Follow all safety precautions and procedures, and always wear the proper personal protective equipment. Hazardous materials are safe to use if used properly. Take responsibility for your personal safety and the safety of others by following company procedures designed to help you achieve your #1 goal: safety. Thank you.